All right, Jignain Ashwin, this is Kunal. He handles everything that we do here at GeekyAnts from a strategy perspective. Uh, so now that we have met each other officially and virtually, I think a good point to start off the discussion by obviously we've heard from our speakers already. They've given their introductions and spoken to us about what their humble beginnings were, what they've been doing. But just to reiterate very quickly, if we could just have all of you guys tell us again, what exactly are you guys doing right now in the fintech industry, and just tell us about it. Kunal, why don't you go first?
Yeah, right. So we are the consulting company, as you guys know. GeekyAnts actually do a lot for the clients, and we take the ideas and we deliver it into the product. So fintech is some of the part which we have seen very gradually increased in the last 2 to 3 years. The way the different tech stacks has come into the picture, the client's expectation and the thoughts has completely changed, and the way they are innovating the ideas, our company is actually delivering those into the right solutions. So in this phase right now, so my role is actually mostly focused on onto the client satisfaction. We deliver, like, we have the bunch of the devs, we have the bunch of the QAs, and the complete team itself deliver a solution to the clients. So that's my role here, and that's how our company is actually delivering for the fintech industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Nikhil, obviously, you've told everybody about what the platform is, and multiple is obviously something that's really up and coming, and it's already made a name for itself. But where did this idea come from? I mean, what is your humble beginnings been in terms of that product?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we are here trying to disrupt the way we think about savings and investment. So, like I mentioned in my presentation, also, what we finally do with investments is that we use them for some consumption. It could be something like a retirement annuity after retirement. It could be a small short-term thing like a car, or a very short-term thing like a mobile phone also. But finally, the money that you receive is finally used for consumption. So, but there are very few avenues present which will advise you or which will tell you where to invest the money. So the idea came across that a lot of investment applications and banks and a lot of advisors are present in the market. Someone like LIC has been present since decades, and all of us would have seen an LIC agent or interacted with some of them. And it has been how financial advice has been going around in India. But what we are trying to do here is that can you efficiently invest for each and every duration and on a goal-based basis, and finally linking it with your consumption. So this was something that was lacking. We are actually proud to be a globally first. So we are proud to be a globally first initiative to do this, and we think that we can take it internationally and global, and built in India. Because today nobody across the world, somebody is working in payment separately, somebody is working in investment separately, but nobody is trying to link the whole journey in a way that we are trying to envisage. And my personal role here is that I'm from the investment advisory team. We select the recommended mutual funds for you. We select the asset allocation for you, and basically help you achieve your goal from a financial perspective. We have other teams looking at brand partnerships who help you in the final consumption. So that's how we
Right. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Jignain, what has Expert App Devs been doing in fintech these days?
Sure. So if we talk about expert app devs, we are a service providing organization, right? We have in-house team of developers who have worked on projects for fintech, and we have developed somewhere around 15 to 18 plus applications around the globe and also here in India. Okay, it's not always that a complete development comes all together, but we get parts and parcels and so on. So sometimes from the inception stage, and also sometimes from in between. So that's how expert app devs has been, part of the journey of the fintech revolution in this decade, and how we have done some of the good applications. Due to the NDA, sure, I will not be able to share the names, but definitely, yeah.
Yes, always.
We are in touch with Martin, so Martin knows about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, great. And finally, Ashwin, where is your enthusiasm for products taking you these days?
So, trying to create a customer app which can really help uh, engage customers at a much more deeper level. When you when you as soon as you hear insurance, right, thing that the only time that you can think of a customer will interact with you would be at the time of purchasing, at the time of renewal, and finally at the time of claim, right? So there is not much touch point where you can get in touch with the customer, maybe try to make him understand what kind of other products do you have, or let's say find out cross sell opportunities, what the customer might be interested in, and
Right.
share some insights. So major work is going on from an app perspective so that we can enhance the customer service experience, and eventually getting to a place where the customer starts getting pulled towards the app because we are providing, I think, much more apart from servicing their existing products. And maybe it becomes an avenue of other services which we offer, which the regulator has given approvals on in terms of value added services when it comes to health, pay as you drive solutions. I mean, as and when you need any kind of additional insurance, you can just come to the app and get it quickly, right? And from health perspective, yes, I mean, value added when you say value added services, it itself is a big I mean, product in itself, right? I mean, what kind of services that you will do, how they can be technology enabled, and then again national health stat coming in, how do you utilize those kind of services and then give a more enhanced and richer experience to the customer. So yes, majorly everything is revolving around customer experience and app. So I would say app is the product that I'm enthusiastic about right now.
As all of us are, as all of
Yeah.
us are. Great. So I think it's a very great starting point for our discussion today. I'd like to ask all of you folks, since you all are working into different aspects of fintech, but it's again very core fintech, right? And of course, Kunal, there's a lot of R&D that goes into helping clients solve their own problems sometimes, or when they're trying to solve certain problems in fintech in their own way. Uh, so, based on these research and development, and based on these insights that you all have gained, what are the current major disruptions in fintech that you see in the Indian market, and how do you think it's affecting the Indian market today? Kunal, why don't you begin?
I will take up into this one. Yeah, it's a very good question actually, because it will actually shape the next couple of years for the industry. Um, I have been talking to the clients, and the sentiments. What is exactly right now is actually mostly focused on the insurance sector, which is very good for Ashwin, right? Ashwin, right? And I can foresee few of the investment which will definitely come into the insurance sector. And the reason for that is, at this point, if you see the insurance sector completely, we have a very good set for the onboarding of the customer. We have a very good setup for the distribution of the insurance part. But if you see very closely, we don't have a very solid application or the solution for the claim aspect of the insurance, which is still open points where I foresee that we will definitely see a lot of the investment coming in to have real a kind of satisfaction for the client. Like for example, yesterday the car was completely like my car was here completely dead, and my insurance partner was Tata AIC, and
Ashwin?
I really have to find the number to call them, and it actually took me like a couple of calls to really have the right person. Even that was fine because that number was into the policy, but I really have no clue how the claim will work, right? Because we don't have the solution, and we have seen this because a lot of insurance, not only in the India. I have personally talked to Asia Pac insurance companies and as well, and we really feel that a lot of the investment will come into the claim sector of this insurance. This is the one part of it. The second part, the sentiments on the let's say the new banking aspect, right? Where a lot of investment has happened, and if you see the recent regulations from the customer has little bit cautioned the sentiments of the startups, right? I personally feel that with the time, the way the startup and the governments are in the conversation, the regulation will be more logical, and that will actually help to introduce a better lineup for the startups. That is where I feel in the coming few months, something more good aspect will definitely come. And plus MSME segment, because we have not been able to talk on the MSME segment, which is a major chunk for the Indian economy. And if you see, from 2015 to 2020, we started with the UPI, which actually changed the way the MSME works. And then you see a lot of small innovation has come in terms of the application for the MSMEs. So what the stages has happened, like we first solved the problem of the payment, digital payment. We then have given a platform to them to really operate in the right way, right? And now we are having the solution for the easy loans, right? And that is where I really feel that in the future, some more tech will have the real influence.
Right, right. Makes a lot of sense. So basically, what you're trying to say here is that if you're talking about insurance, obviously, uh, you get it, you know what it's going to give to you and what you're going to get out of it. But when you actually go to claim that thing, this is some sort of cloudiness around it, right? And this is not just an impact that the Indian market is facing, but it's spread
It's
across
global.
multiple markets,
It is
basically.
right.
Right. What are your views on this?
Sure. So I agree on some points deeply with Kunal that he had mentioned about specifically the MSME sector or the lending part that he talked about coming from perspective of neobanks as well. While I'm working in the wealth management industry and where we promote a non-credit or stay away from credit kind of thing, the credit does form a deep part of our lives. Sometime or the other, for an appreciating asset like home loan, it may make more sense to go for something like credit. So today, credit accessibility has become much easier. Earlier, a physical branch was needed to establish a trust in a remote area where you would have some credit. But today, with the access of mobile phones and internet, it has become very accessible to everybody. Obviously, the government also has a role to play with the accounts being open, bank accounts being open for everybody. But like Jinyan had also mentioned in his presentation, a couple decades back, ATM was also a disruption. So if we talk about fintech disruption today, I feel that the small process disruptions which don't catch our eye are something that is really making a big impact on the actual usability to the end user. There are obviously some innovations coming in which will have deeper impact, and maybe not all of them will succeed, but those who succeed will make it big. But the smaller process innovations, where you have an alternative credit scoring system, where you can assess a person's behavior based on, say, their mobile usage, their social network, their geotagging location, and such. That I think has the potential to have a very big impact on the overall system, as well as a lot of banks you're seeing, legacy banks are upgrading their systems to much more deep digital from a process perspective. So I think that is going to lead a heavy level of innovation. Obviously, there will be some regulation coming around it, and RBI and other regulators which are involved will have some regulation. But I feel that this industry will have a long way to go from a process innovation perspective.
Right. So little things that make it easy for both institutions and customers in their processes and everything, but they don't necessarily come out, right? I mean, a customer goes to a bank and says that, hey, this process is really simple, but is unaware of what goes behind the scenes to make it simple. And these is little things that
Correct.
matter. So you're saying that these disruptions will continue to happen, and these are the little things that are actually making a huge impact.
That's it. That's it.
Right.
Some of these things we have started to take a little bit for granted. Like maybe the newer generation is very used to QR or QR transfers, right? But maybe 5 years back it was not that common.
Right. Maybe nobody have even thought of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But those simple things have transformed
Right.
transformed our lives actually.
Sure. Ashwin,
Yeah,
Tata AIG.
I know. I heard that. So,
Love to know your views.
I mean, I don't know what happened in your case, Kunal. Maybe I'll talk to you separately to understand it. But yes, I mean, there's no denying it that sometimes, because of the volumes, it is always difficult to address each and every case in the first call itself. Sometimes you get into waiting. Sometimes maybe the customer is not able to find out, let's say, the phone numbers. So there, see, I mean, from an insurance perspective, when you look at it, I agree to what Kunal is saying. There is something interesting which might come up when it comes to claims, because see, I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about this specific case, which is of motor, what is important is first notification of loss, right? I mean, everybody wants to be notified first as an insurance company. As soon as you get notified first, the chances of frauds happening, or let's say the customer reporting something wrong, are very difficult. As a layman, I mean, you don't really understand how to game the system, right? I mean, you are not into the system. But let's say if directly comes from the notification of loss comes from somewhere else, let's say at that point of time there are a few additional things which might come in. Not that every case is like that, but still there is chances of frauds happening, or because of that there are a lot many processes which are being stitched, right, to make sure that you don't really you identify these frauds and get whatever is right to the customer. So there are delays and things which are happening here, but if technically we are able to find these things properly, like I mentioned even before, right, what is happening is based on, let's say, the images which are uploaded, you can today do image recognition, identify whether this is the same image which was uploaded, let's say, a year back, and it's basically a claims fraud happening. These kind of things are being targeted and are being identified. So there are a few things which are still not real time, which everybody would like to be real time. Okay, as soon as such a, I have a claim, you take yeah, I mean, app, open the video, you just scan through 360, and boom, like your 10,000 rupees claim is approved. Right, so that is a bit difficult today. I mean, it's not that people are not working on it; everybody's working on it, but there is a case of accuracy, right? I mean, whether like, see, me identifying that okay, this is not a damage as a damage, and then uh, taking this case to a physical inspection, which is fine. I mean, it is just a delay. But let's say if you have a damage and I say that that is not a damage and I decline your claim, that is bad, right? That is a bad customer experience because customer will get pissed. Yes, so this is what is the problem. So I mean, these kind of things and handling this is kind of a bit tricky. And I think technology is eventually enabling us to do that in multiple ways. It's just a matter of time, as and when we reach that accuracy, I think processes will start improving. I mean, and the experiences which Kunal had faced, such kind of experience will start dying down, hopefully, right? I
Right.
mean, so like, I mean, I think Jignain also mentioned about, right, bot calls, right? Today, voice bots. Voice bots are something which are being deployed from call center perspective, that at least you know what you need. Let's say there is a call going on with an executive for a claim. Maybe it is taking some time, but you are just calling up to get your policy PDF. So such kind of things, the bot can help you with those questions, get your email address, or at least tell you that okay, we are live on WhatsApp. Why don't policy number and you have your policy copy within seconds. So there are multiple solutions which are there, and because of which the volumes will reduce. And eventually, obviously, everybody wants to get into tech. Who wants to run huge call centers and bear those kind of costs, right? So I mean, yeah, the direction is there. I think we are also catching up in terms of speed. It's just a matter of time. I think it becomes difficult, like at times, thinking outside the box. And what is kind of like innovations are always going to be there, but when you are a large organization, you also tend to think about how exactly this is going to impact my business, right? Innovation is something which sounds great. I mean, the output is also great, but may not be utilizable in your current processes and scheme of things, right? So those kind of things and challenges are there, which you always have to tackle around, and then obviously you have to keep innovating. So that's how I look at insurance and innovations coming in. There will be few things which will be there from an underwriting perspective also, like apart from claim servicing, because you want to create new products. So to create new products, you need to figure out new data sets. You need to work on those data sets and create new pricing models. So what kind of data sets would we be using? What kind of pricing models are we going to use? Where exactly this data is going to come from? All these kind of things. I think there the innovation will start coming in. How do I identify what is the risk of Kunal? What is the risk of, let's say, Nikhil, Jignain, anyone, right? So these kind of identification of risk is also something that I think people will work on eventually. So like in fintech, when you talk about loans, you talk about secondary data, right? I mean, you talk about the primary data which the customer is giving, then you try to identify data from LinkedIn, Facebook, and any other channels, and try to give him a different kind of scoring mechanism, and give him a score. So similarly, from a health perspective, how do I identify that this person is a good customer? From a car perspective, until and unless we get into telematics solution where the company is going towards today, I identify how exactly the customer is driving, then only I can give him more discounts. Right? Today there are no such kind of facilities, or let's say this is just under POCs, and it's getting deployed in limited audiences, and I think it's moving now because even the regulator has approved it, and it becomes easier to file such kind of products now. So that is where things are moving. I mean, it's a good place to be in. I mean, I went into it luckily 5 years ago. I never thought that it would be interesting and I'll stick to it, but now I'm enjoying my journey with insurance.
Kunal, I think we've come across a lot of companies and we've worked with a lot of companies who have attempted to make a digital only bank and just have every operation on a digital platform, right?
Yeah.
So, since we have worked with them and you've worked with them very closely, what do you think? Do you think it's a very viable option to go forward with?
See, again, it's the same thing what we just heard from him, that they have really developed very innovative solutions, right? And what they are actually trying to remove is the old school style of the banking, right? And if you see very closely, the competition is completely from the big banks, which are really not innovating towards what these small companies are doing right now, right? Uh, the companies with whom we are right now having our collaboration, we have seriously seen them very growing fast in a different way. But again, their growth is completely dependent on regulations, right? And if you see very closely the way RBI works, RBI never comes in the initial phase of the any innovations. They look very closely because they are looking to allow the technology to grow in the country, because the kind of numbers we have in terms of the population is a huge, and every government organization understands that with their only way of working, they cannot handle this whole country. So they are allowing the startups to go into the technology mindset. They are enabling them to use it, but at a certain point when it started disrupting their thought, they come up with a regulation. Right? It's
So
a fact.
basically, you let the technology stabilize itself throughout the country, and then RBI steps and says, "Now I'm going to cut a slice."
Right. So, for example, if you see very closely that why this neo banking and the lending has been liberalized, the major reason has been always is the NPA risk. Okay, NPA has been a big risk for the banks. Okay, and the way these startups were lending the money, which was not accounted, which was not really taken under the risk, and that's where RBI jumps in. But it was not like RBI was not having this information. It was letting the technology grow, matured, and then come back with a heavy setting that no, this has to be stopped with certain regulation. So what is said is really completely going digital is a long way right now for us. But if you compare with the other countries, we are very heavy digital,
Yeah.
which is also true, right? So it will take some time, but I can foresee that the people have the agenda to go there.
Right. So obviously, since we're talking about, you mentioned that there is always this to and fro between convenience versus security versus regulations. We also, Kunal, mentioned that regulations are going to obviously play a big role, and I think it's safe to say that if we do look towards a future that is digital only, we will also have to welcome a bag full of regulations that come with it. So it's like, hey, okay, you're running 100% of whatever you're running right now. We're going to take like 40% out of it, and now because you're so used to it, you have to agree to it. We don't have an option. But if we just have to put our thinking caps on for a second, since we're talking about security and convenience, according to you guys now, are we back?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good. Hi. Great. Sorry, I think there was some massive disruption there, but glad that we're back. We have moved on to something else, so I'll just fill you in, guys, in a second. We've been talking about a digital only future for banking and how there's always this trade-off between convenience and security. So I was going to be talking about this one particular. I was going to ask you guys these questions. That obviously in a digital only bank, this is for Ashwin and Jignen. So obviously we are talking about how if we look towards a digital only future for banking, there's always a lot of regulations that will come with it, and a lot of other things, a lot of other implications of it. So what I wanted to ask you guys was, if you were in a position where you were to balance between this idea of convenience versus this idea of security, like you mentioned that if you're putting your money in a digital only bank, what guarantee do you have that it's in the right place, and what guarantee do you have that you're going to get it back? So there's always convenience because you don't actually have to move. You can do it in the comfort of your own bed. But then there's always the security aspect of it. So if it were up to you guys, how would you balance that thing? I mean, where is the middle ground? Where would you draw the line? So I think probably Nikhil, you could start first.
So on the convenience versus security aspect, right? It's always been, you have to. There's the need to strike a delicate balance between the two, because convenience is something that all of us will demand and probably require, and all of us, it makes life easier for almost everybody, right? But there is a security aspect to it, like I mentioned on lending. It's very convenient to borrow online today. Products like BNPL, which recently have faced some regulatory issues or restrictions rather, have made life very convenient. Right at the point of sale, you're purchasing a shoe and you can take it on EMI basically. Right? So that is a convenience aspect. But what about the security aspect of it? So I feel that as regulations get stronger, and personally, I don't see them as very restrictive. Why that is so is, once a product is regulated, right, then it's ready for a sustainable scale. So that is where I feel that the accidents will significantly reduce, and even if the growth will not go as fast as it was when it was getting adopted by the early adopters, the growth rate may come down, but the sustainability of the growth and the overall impact again it has on everybody will kind of get democratized, and plus in a very beneficial way for everybody.
So
Right?
slow and steady is what
Right.
you
So
mean.
that is what I feel where you have to strike a balance between the two. So security is something you cannot really ignore. You cannot have convenience at the cost of security. So as much as you can strike a balance between the two, I think there's a healthy market that we can see going forward for it.
Right. Since Jignan and Ashwin are back, Jignan, I'd love to hear from you. Where do you think this balance lies, and where would you draw the line?
See, first I would like to give you some insight about how this only digital banking is going to be the part of the future, right? So if we talk about this, the post demonetization it came into picture, right? And in this 5 or 4 years, it has got a major boost, and the first major boost was the pandemic, right? It made it to happen. We had no options. We could not, risk our lives to go out and do any banking transactions. Rather, we did everything on Paytm, Google Pay, via the banking applications. People who were not knowing, right, our parents, right, above 60 senior citizens, were also involved in this sort of transactions. Even the vegetable vendor is now part of digital transactions, right? So it's always, yes, security is always a part, because there are a lot of applications which came in between, right, for Paytm, where you can generate a fake payment image and then you can show to the vendor, right? It comes to that part where a person is not knowing how that digital can be helpful to him and how that security cannot be compromised, right? That could be one aspect. Apart from that, ease of use is also the reason why digital banking is taking a lot of efforts, right? And why people are trying to push it so much. Digital banks allows you to seamlessly send money to friends and relatives in India, US, UK, wherever they are based, right? There are lots of online platforms like TransferWise and all, which incurs very little cost, right? If you're using PayPal, you need to pay 20% for money transfers. But coming to Wise, you make a $3,000, $4,000 transaction, you just need to pay $5, $8 on that, right? So ease of use is also there. Fees, right? We cover the fees aspect also there. That digital banking is very little. People are not generally using Swifts now. Why? Because if they have an option of Wise, they would not go with Swift. They would not use PayPal. They would not use Venmo and all those things. Correct. Apart from that, it's a big thing for the banks who are already having a lot of overheads invested in their kiosks and live banks where if there is not a walk-in of 100 a day, but they have to maintain a they have to purchase a shop, they need to keep a staff of 20, 30 people, right? So a lot of banks would be going digitally. They would be shutting down their operations and their branches where not walk-ins are there, right? A lot of walk-ins are there. So and obviously the technology, right? So if we talk about today the major things that are shopping, dating, and also currently due to the pandemic, the courts also went digital. No one thought that could happen, right? But the courts also went digital. We cannot stop everything. So what happens if something in future which is unprecedented again happens, right? So they need to find something. So digital only might be the future, but as Nikhil said that yes, it is coming at a cost of security, and if those things are taken care of, things would be very easy to be taken care of. Biometrics is playing a major role, but then also people can find a way to also hack those things. So yes, definitely.
Right. Ashwin, I presume that we'll all be on the same page.
A bit different here. I mean, see, I mean, I mean, the main point is I'm not really that attached to the subject because don't know much about payments, how exactly the whole industry works. Haven't worked on it directly. But my view is like, see, security is something that can, and I mean, you can figure out solutions for it. I mean, today the tech is, I mean, eventually increasing. You are bringing in new innovations. So security is something that I think still can be addressed. But the major problem for such kind of an industry is, I think, trust from a bank's perspective and from a user's perspective. Till the point you don't have that trust within your bank or your customer that whatever services and things are being provided are trustable, I don't think you will go for such kind of digital only banks. And then eventually it becomes customer behavior based on which segments are you trying to tap into. Like, I mean, an example comes to my mind is I'm an Amex user. Okay. So I don't know where the Amex branch is. I never tried to locate it. But I trust that whenever I swipe it and if I pay my dues on time, it will still serve me. Right. So I mean, in terms of that, trust kind of like also builds in, and obviously security is there that your app should be working in such a way that nobody should be able to hack it, and those kind of things will always come. Security, I mean, that is why there are so many cyber security startups which are coming in. Even cyber insurances, which is something also is being developed and eventually being pushed into the market. Identity theft and these many things are there, right? So but there is one aspect of security, and the other aspect is also trust. Security is something that you can eventually I mean is going to be addressed from a tech perspective, but the major thing of trust, right, which also is faced in insurance. Let's say sometimes people prefer talking to an executive and then buying insurance because they like that human feel and that trust that they get from talking to someone. That is how I correlate digital only and a branch based kind of banking system, right? So those that kind of trust should be there. Whenever you interact with a digital ecosystem, you should feel that trust. Okay, this is trustworthy. I don't have to bother about, yeah, if I put money into it, it will go away. Not from a security perspective, but from a trust perspective. Security should always be there. And I think that regulations, as everyone is saying, I think once you have regulations and those kind of um, um, tech solutions in place, I think that can be addressed. But this trust issue is something that needs to be addressed. And currently, I am not sure how that can be addressed. Don't have any view on that. But I think that is something which needs to be addressed if we want to go to digital only kind of solutions.
It's actually a very interesting take on this entire thing. Uh, Kunal, I think it's an amalgamation of everything. That's all there's to it.
It is.
We'd love to know your views.
Yeah, see, everyone has given the right view, and I should not add the point, but the one thing which we always have to think around is the consumer. Um, our consumer, if you take city-wise, let's say divide our India into the city type, right? Grade A, grade B, grade C, city. Every consumer, the way they are thinking around the banking is completely different.
Yep.
See, he mentioned very clearly that everyone would love to have the lending capacity. Like they will look forward to have the money in house, right? Right now, if you see with the credit card only, if we take the example of the credit card, the people are having 5 to 6 credit card, they are not repaying it, and the civil scores are going down. So I'm just trying to say that the consumer in India are very diversified, right? And if the regulation and the security for those people are not there, then it will be devastating for our economy, right? The way our money will get lost is it will be enormous. For example, farmers. Right now, there are a lot of applications, and the companies are coming to lend the loan to the farmers, right? And we know the farmers' condition. Even the government has been giving a lot of relaxations to them. So the diversification of the users for lending is completely different for us.
So
And
there's no one size fits all
it is
in
not.
India. It's
It
not
is
possible
not.
at all.
Yeah, and it will become very difficult if we don't have a good security for those people, a good regulations in terms of their capacity to take the loan, and then again, like as Ashwin is saying, that the trust factor, right? The trust to see something physical is still in India, and it will take a lot of time to really build trust with such kind of like complete digital things. So
Right.
yeah,
That actually makes a lot of sense. Uh, and I think that probably the only way to find out would be, just head into the future, let time pass, and see where we are at.
Yes.
I guess, right? Right. So we are actually out of time. I had a couple of more points that I wanted to talk about, but we are actually running out of time. I don't want to keep you guys for long. So at this point, I'd like to open up the panel to the audience. If you guys have any questions, and even people online, we've got people standing by reading your questions. So if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask the panel, please go ahead. If anybody has anything that they'd like to talk about, everybody's in really deep thought. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to know your journey from when you got the idea and when you got this idea of to disrupt this industry. Did you organically thought about it, or was it like you guys discuss you talk to customers because it's something that you're trying to do something new in a new space as such, right? So how what was the journey that you went through from trying to solve a problem, trying to get the insights, talking to consumers, talking to users properly? Where did you find that this is the market that I want to target to? That's, of course, personal finance is always there. But the specifics that you are trying to bring in, so from there to the implementation.
Right.
So, just to reiterate that question for people who are watching online, gentleman from the audience just asked Nikhil and Ashwin that
This is Pradeep.
Pradeep, this is Pradeep, right? So Pradeep just asked this question that with these products that you guys are working on, uh, was this idea to disrupt the space very organic, or was there a problem that these guys personally faced which they thought to solve, and that's how this idea came about? And what were the implications and the intricacies of this entire thing? So why don't you go for it?
Sure. Basically, how we first came across the idea was that it was over the years. It was nothing that I will say that overnight or over one period I thought that we should introduce this. But what happened is many times we would have seen people and like talking about our product, which is more into investments, it's a long gestation before you see the results. Your investments can happen today, but your results may come 5 years down the line. During that period, and as human behavior is involved into investing, what happens is you can borrow ideas, but you can't borrow conviction. So what happens is you may not know through the market cycles why you are invested, or was it a should I sell or buy more. In March 2020 when COVID had hit, the stock market had crashed almost 30-35% versus January that same year. Many people who have been in the market earlier would have probably added more looking at the valuations. But many who came recently or who started their first SIP in a equity fund 6 months back, listening to their neighbor, might not have received the right advice and might have probably taken a adverse action to their own financial health. Plus, we obviously frequently keep hearing stories or which can lead to financial distress in a lot of people. Many times, the simple personal finance planning is missing. So, either missing or very expensive. It's available to a lot of HNIs or high net worth individuals. But what we observed is to the common person, it's not available in a way which is beneficial to the customer. So that is where the idea popped up that why not build something like an application which is downloadable by everybody, which has a core logic built into it of investment advisory based on risk profiling, based on your goals, because you will require a certain advice versus a person sitting next to you. So why not build it into an application which everybody can download and just have a look at it? And that's why we decided that we'll work for the customer and advise for their goals, not for driven by any other incentive. And finally, the linkage of the purchase, right? This is again that we got over time as a feedback from people that how do we keep them excited? Like I said, there's a longer gestation period for investments, whether they are working or not. But if you have a goal in mind, like I want to buy a car, I want to buy a bike, I want to buy a travel package, and the other aspect is that every year we are spending a significant chunk on consumption. We may be saving some part, but a bulk of it goes towards, say, your rent, utilities, child tuition fee, travel, and such. There's no investment happening for these where it can happen actually. So that was the gap that we saw, and which is what led us to build the product that we have tried to build. And it also allows people to avoid the debt trap. So it was like we thought that heading in the right direction as far as customer benefit is concerned, or financial health of a person, an individual, as well as the overall society is concerned. So that is when we decided to say push the pedal on this and scale it up to an extent where it becomes a very usable and disruptive kind of a product.
So very classic case of the problem comes first, and if nobody is solving it, fine, I'll do it myself, kind of
So
a
when
thing.
it comes to generation of idea or something, timing is one aspect we look at. So
Right.
in your case, was it the case like this is the right time I should be targeting it?
And so actually, timing wise, when it's concerned, we were like, it's already too late. This should have been done decades ago or maybe years ago. But yeah, to some extent, the penetration of internet and mobile technology. So as far as application is concerned, obviously we could have something like this on a website maybe a decade back also. But today, with the applications becoming more popular, internet having more penetration, and in a country like India, which is very diverse and different needs, where personalization may be very costly per unit basis. But if you can scale it up, nothing like it. So that is how we thought that it is definitely the right time. It was the right time probably a couple of years back, but it's definitely the right time to start now. And to some extent, the COVID pandemic has definitely helped us because, like previously mentioned, there was a
Open up
lot of
people's
adoption.
mind to it. Yeah.
Mind to it. Plus, people had a lot of adoption towards applications. Banking itself, we had mentioned that people will not, you will not risk your life and get out for
Right.
it. But so the acceptability has increased. So that has definitely, from a timing perspective, that has really
Right. Right. So, Pradeep, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that is.
Fantastic. We have time for one more question, so go for it. And your name, please.
Shivam.
Shivam is going to ask us a question. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Shivam.
so my question is like imagine that you are an investor and like we are talking about fintech and growth. So what would be like your bad 5 years in terms of the startups you see? For example, if I were, I would choose like Crate or for insurance it might be trend. For insurance it might be Wipro. It's by FinShort. And for example, for stocks and all, it might be trend line. And of course, you can't choose your company, so that's a difficult question.
That's a good spot to put in. Fantastic, fantastic question.
Tell your competitors name.
Yeah, so that's a great question. You may want to repeat it for the viewers online if they were not aware.
Sure. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. My God. So the question that Shivam asked was that if you are an investor today, what are the top five fintech companies or startups that you would like to invest into that are changing the way we perform regular financial activities?
So, and we can't choose our own company.
You can't choose your own
So,
companies. It's put everybody in a very difficult spot.
but to that extent, I will, I'll just claim on to someone like Dato, which you yourself mentioned. They are working from more of a consumer perspective, and I feel that that has more of a sustainability angle to it. That from a long-term perspective, they will end up servicing the customers in a way which benefits the customer. So that has much of a longevity as compared to many other, say, applications or trends in that fashion. So Ditto is something that comes to mind. Zerodha has been a disruptor since a decade now. Even today, I think from a brokerage perspective, the ease of calculations, they were the first to introduce a lot of things. They've introduced some nudges. They've introduced activities to protect the customer in a sense. So, as far as broking is concerned, I'll say that someone like Zerodha is doing very well. If I talk about banks and traditional banks, I will say that again, a lot of these banks are adopting the digital aspect. Or everybody's mobile application has become an integrated mobile application today. You can find your credit cards there, you can find your offers on a credit card there. So that has become a real big game changer. So even something like a PSB where SBI's app, if you would have used years back or even net banking, today they have significantly changed the application and the YONO application that they talk about. It's been a game changer as far as their customers are concerned. So these are the few names that come to my mind when I talk about disruption and sustainable investment into benefit. So that's what comes to my mind.
All right. Ashwin, top five.
So it's kind of like very difficult to answer this question, right? So like as an investor, when you decide which startup do you invest into, first thing you need to answer is what is your motive and agenda as an investor, right? I mean, is it the return from something? Is it a 5 year return? Is it a 10 year return? I don't know. I mean, these kind of things. Like so, I myself, though I am, means I work in insurance space and fintech space, but if I ever think of myself as an investor, I keep tracking few startups here and there, but it is majorly from a agricultural domain, right? I'm very enthusiastic about those kind of startups, and so like and when I talk about these kind of things, I look for more innovation perspective, right? I mean, I would want my startup to do innovation because this is the like there are some startups which you invest in from an innovation perspective. You don't know whether this is going to grow, but the product is nice. It might help, right? That might is a very, very big if, right? So, uh, like as a startup, when you start a business, either you get into the innovation space or either you get into money making space, right? You need, as an investor, you need to decide which kind of startup do you choose and what are your intents on that. So like I mean, when you try to choose, I mean, there will be a lot of factors. If you're going for something like I mean, let's say I want to double my money, triple my money, those kind of things, and you want to be a bit risk averse, or you want to look at balance sheets and such kind of things, then you try to go for startups which have good I mean unit economics and all those kind of things. You'll have to look at that specifically, right? But if you are going more from an innovation perspective, and yeah, chalo, theek hai, this seems very interesting, and then I want to. So like it also depends on what stage are you investing in, right? So innovating kind of startups are at a low stage, so it becomes difficult. It's more likely whether you like the founders, you think that there is good amount of dedication and the idea is strong. I mean, the problem is good to be addressed, right? So those kind of things, basis of that, you can select a startup. So I think me just rambling about few 4 5 top startup names, I don't think will really help anyone. But from a perspective, I think this is where people should give a thought process around. Like, I mean, what exactly are you looking for, right? Which startup are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody who is just starting and doing some incredible work in terms of innovation? Maybe might not have future, might have future, which time will tell, right? I mean, sometimes the solution comes first and then you figure out a problem. I mean, which is a very difficult state to be in. But then you create a market yourself that can be potentially huge, right? So that's a gambit that you take on. And sometimes it is like you try to become an investor at, let's say, series A, series B level, where things have already been crystallized. You just know how to scale it up, and then you be part of that, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think that's something that I sorry, I forgot the name who asked the question, but I think that you should look for.
So basically, the investor was just a the high level idea or like where do you put the money? It was in terms of growth only, like the which startups or companies you like. I think it was like in general. It's not about Series A, Series B or anything.
Right. So what he's saying is that the choice that you have to make is not necessarily in terms of Series A, Series B, Series C, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's in terms of the perspective that you're talking about. I mean,
Just
in
the
terms of
things you like. It's not like you might be on innovation or like, for example, why do you like pizza? Just because I like pizza. It's like
okay, when it says you could just pick a company like you want your pizza. If you like pizza, you like pizza. So if you like a company, pick it. Kunal, rapid fire.
Okay.
What would you go for?
So
What would you go for? Top five.
Zerodha is very nice from my side, as like they are completely consumer centric and very open and very their innovative way of explaining the things is very open, and I definitely like that company a lot. And also they are giving a lot of trust for the consumer. So that's
Right.
one of my choice. And I am not very much into discovery of the startups.
Right.
I am more stable with few of the companies that I trust on, and I am mostly focused on the organic growth, what they are giving with innovation, and that gives a bit of confidence for the consumer that they are onto the right track. So yeah,
Okay.
Zerodha is my first choice in that terms.
All right. Fine, Jignain.
Right. So I would like to agree with Kunal as he said that yes, it's not always about which startup is good. Financials also play a major role when you are coming to investing, right? Because at the day's end, you don't want to, I would not like to say anything wrong about startups, but we don't want to lose money as investors, right? So it's better, as Kunal Ashwin said that better to get into the picture when things are more crystallized and you know that what exactly you are getting into. So yeah, but coming to startups, as Nikhil said, that a decade ago Zerodha was started, but still, if I talk about Zerodha, it's still one of the best applications, right, for investing. They have also come up with Coin and other two applications for investing and understanding about stocks and all. So yes, that would be my answer.
All right, fantastic. So, folks, that's all the time we have for this panel discussion. So, I'd like to close it. A big thank you to Ashwin, Jignain, Nikhil, and Kunal. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It was excellent. I've learned quite a lot about the entire fintech industry and what to invest in and what not to. Perhaps I'll give Tata AIG a call. Anyway, again, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Thank you for
Thanks
joining
for
me for
watching.
this conversation. And if you guys would just be here, we can always, close the session and the entire event here. So, folks, thank you so much for spending your Saturday evening and afternoon with us. It was a pleasure to host you all here. This is obviously the first fintech meetup that we've done, but there's much more to come, and we would love for you to come back. Obviously, a couple of things. I'd like to give a huge shout out to the entire team that has been managing this event. A big shout out to Rishabh, Bhushan, Adrika, Shweta, who's handling this remotely, and everybody else who has been a part of this. Thank you so much, Martin, for the excellent keynote. It's his first time on stage, and he did an excellent job. So also, if you guys have feedback, we would love some feedback. So do write about us on Twitter. Tag us at the rate GeekyAnts or at any platform that you use, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, even, we'll all be here. Uh, and yes, I am again your host Digvijay, and thank you so much for joining us today. One very important information is that we have pizza, beer, and all of the other refreshments waiting for you outside. So this is where the real fun begins. And so let's
So
just
we are not
I think
invited to
Ashwin,
the
we
fun.
lost on this one,
That is
right?
very sad.
yeah. Well, I
We
asked you
lost
guys
on
to
this
come.
one.
Look. I very cryptically told you guys that it's much better if you come here in person, right? So this is something that you guys must keep in mind for the next time.
I had a word with Prapada, but the timeline was very short, so could not come.
See, this is where you use startups, Swiggy, Zomato. There are lots
This is where you start
Good one,
investing in
Ashwin.
these startups as well.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
great one.
So we have refreshments. You guys enjoy yourselves. Please feel free. And once again, thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Zignain, for staying with us
Yes.
virtually throughout this event. It was a pleasure
A
having you
pleasure.
here, and hopefully next
Same
time
here,
we'll
same.
meet you in person. Uh,
Sure. Thank you so much.
thank you, Kunal. Thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Kunal. Thank you, Digvijay.
And to all the viewers online, thank you for joining us. You guys have been wonderful. Take care, and we'll see you next time.